All right, hello everyone. Welcome to Writing Quest. My name is Brenden Pugh, and today we have Kaden Love with us, and we're going to be talking about his book projects and just how things are going with him. So I want you to start by telling us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I'm Kaden Love. Like he said, I am the author of Elegy of a Fragmented Vineyard right there. I released that on Kickstarter earlier this year. And I've also written Beast Call, which is a prequel novella. Um, so these are my first books. Currently writing the second book in the series, and big fan of just Brandon Sanderson, George R. R. Martin, Joe Abercrombie, and those are my big influences. So read, write, and I run a lot too. So that's
Yeah,
pretty much mostly about me.
and you're self-published, did it all. You're all
Hmm.
by yourself, which is great. Wanna So hilariously, way I found you was just the random algorithm on Twitter where I saw your picture where you gave the book to Brandon Sanderson, and I was like, I want to hear that story. So
Yeah.
that's part of why I reached out. But before we get to that, why don't you tell us why you decided to self-publish, what that journey was kind of like for you, um, how that all kind of worked for you.
Yeah. I think a lot of authors when they first, I guess when they're just writers before they even consider themselves authors, when people want to write a story and get it out to people, they realize that you need to get it published. And when I tell them I published a book, they typically think, it's through some company. It's traditionally published. Um, and I think the fantasy world or just the literature world in general is kind of overcoming the stigma that was in years past. If your book wasn't good enough to get published, you had to do it on your own. And we're moving past that, which is great. Because I initially reached out when I finished my first draft of my book and was going in, finishing the second draft. And Keon Arladon wrote the 11th cycle. And this was when I was trying to put myself more on social media to kind of get myself ready for getting some attention. And I reached out to him and I'm just like, hey, I see that you're making big waves, attracting a lot of people. And much to him, he had a really good pitch for his book. And so I was just like, hey, could you offer like any advice to someone trying to get in the market? And awesome guy. He was kind enough to just sit down and do a video call with me for a couple hours, where he just talked about what he did. And initially, he started off, he's like, okay, you're going traditional publishing or are you doing self-publish? And he said, I said, traditional, I know it's a difficult process, but I'm fine just going through all that. And then he's like, okay, you can do that. By all means, do it if you want. But I'm going to tell you why I went self-published, which at that time I didn't know he was a self-published author. I still had the idea that self-published books weren't as fantastic as, all the other ones, but there are some amazing self-published books. I mean, right there, you got Zach Argyle's Threadlight trilogy, which is an amazing leather-bound best of my collection, and it is self-published. So he talked me through this, kind of let me know the stages about doing it, and by the end of that call, I was set on it. Some of the big things were you can go really deep into it, talking about copyright freedom, what the company has control over you. Plain and simple for me, I didn't even try to query. I could have. I mean, I am considering it for a future book that isn't in the series, just for the fun of it. But I'm not putting a lot of weight on it. A lot of the big major thing was I wrote a book and I wanted to get it out there. I think there's a lot of authors that are amazing, talented, and just don't have the luck to get what a company wants, what they want to sell. And my book is very unique and it's not something that I was sure someone would pick up and I wanted it out there. And so I went and decided to publish it on my own. And I was very, very fortunate. I recognize that I do have a bit of an advantage because I, like I said, today it's more more of a gray area. Do self-publish or go traditional? One thing that is difficult with self-publishing is you have to pay for your editing and you have to pay for your cover art. My wife is a professional illustrator, so she did my cover, and so that wasn't something I had to worry about.
Yeah.
So that's basically what I wanted. I just kept going through the system. I got a professional editor, went through it, and of course I have it on, Amazon. I have it in the other store systems, but I did initial launch through Kickstarter, and it went really great. So
Yeah.
I'm an indie guy now.
Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah, I think, we're getting into a world where no matter what kind of art you do, whether it's film or music or writing or it's just so much easier now to reach an audience, to find, to put it out yourself. And I think with that comes the benefit of, I mean, there's challenges, of course, like you said, you got to pay for editing yourself. Like there's other things, but I think, the ability to retain all the rights, you have all the creative freedom is yours, and you can just, put out your art, whatever it is, on your own. I think that's really attractive to a lot of people right now, for sure.
Hmm.
I mean, even Brandon Sanderson's a great example. He's traditionally published, but then he put out all the secret projects, and those are all self-published. So even the famous authors, the big guys, they're moving the same direction.
Hmm. Yeah, the market's changing. So
Yeah.
one of the
I
advantages of it.
he just did a podcast with his wife where they talked about the origin of Dragon Steel,
Hmm.
and they said in there part of the reason they did what they did was to have that creative freedom publish it themselves. And they were like, it was harder to do, but now they're in control of it.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's cool. So what was your experience doing Kickstarter? Like, how'd that go for you?
It actually honestly went a lot smoother than I expected. There were definitely a couple bumps along the road that I will be able to overcome better for the next one because I do plan on doing book two through Kickstarter. Um, but it was a great thing to do. I funded my book, and honestly, the main point with this one because I had already paid for everything for my first book, so I wanted to get this one ready to pay for the editing for the next book. Um, Pretty user friendly. The only thing that, if people want to do Kickstarter, I would just say make sure you have a lot of time ahead to plan for it and reach out to other people that have had success. Um, I basically based my page template on another author's page that he and I just talked a lot about his Kickstarter, and he just lent me a ton of resources, told me things that he liked with it, and I just think it's a really cool thing. I would in the future like to have a little more time to fund. I gave my backers like 2 weeks, but I got it out to them pretty soon. I think almost everyone has their copy by now, which is different. I had my book completely ready and ended on release day. And then there's some authors that, there's like, especially deluxe editions, those take a lot more time to produce. So those are months out. But I thought it was a good way to get my first book a lot of attention. And I mean, very plainly speaking, if you look at it from a sales point, I made 116 sales if you
Hmm.
count, all those backers first, which is really good. For an indie debut. And the only thing is that, when I look at a lot of other authors that are having a lot more sales up front on Amazon and things like that, that is one thing that I didn't receive because most of the people that are excited for my book got it through Kickstarter. But it's just a great way that I think to get people excited for a book. Um,
Hmm.
if I see someone releasing a novel and it's just like they throw it out on Amazon, I'm more likely to back a Kickstarter when they throw it out there when I see a lot of people giving it a lot of attention. And I'm a sucker for, cheap goodies. If someone's like, okay, here, if we reach this stretch goal, we'll put on illustrations. So that's what I did with it. And because this was my first novel, I made it pretty simple.
Hmm.
But I do plan on like future ones. If I can get more backers, I'd love to do cool things like adding like minis, miniature figures, or dice or things to go along with the book, because I think that people like that exclusivity
Hmm.
and just to feel that they're a part of something when, they donate to Kickstarter. They're not just buying it, but they're buying into the author's dream.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think people, I backed a few Kickstarter. I backed one recently for someone putting out that's doing a comic book, and yeah, I think people want to support um, indie people. They want to be a part of something, and they want to be involved in. They can say, I was a part of that person's journey," or and on top of that, they can get some really cool
Hmm.
stuff. So, how did the story with Brandon Sanderson happen? What happened there?
Okay. Yeah, so I people that know about me, I'm from Utah, which is where Brandon Sanderson is from. So honestly, a lot of just fortune there straight off the bat.
Hmm.
My wife is about to graduate from Brigham Young University, which is the university he teaches at. And so when my wife and I were living in Provo, where that college is, we lived in some young student married housing and had some friends that we've just kept in touch with. And they came over for a game night and told us they're in his class. And they're like, what if we got him a copy of your book? And I was like, that would be amazing. And so I hand them one. They're like, wait, no, we're going to see if you can, like, let's get you there to meet him. And so
Hmm.
they asked him, and he's cool with it. And it's the same lecture series that you see. I mean, it varies of class to class, of course,
Hmm.
but it's the lecture series that a lot of people watch on YouTube to get them writing, which honestly is really what got me writing. I watched all those and I felt like I had a good foundation going forth. Sat on the front row after the class. He's a super approachable guy, just has like a line, like students will get in a line and have books for him to sign because, there are some people that are genuinely interested in writing in there, but a lot of people are just Brandon Sanderson fans.
Yeah.
So I went there, hopped to the front of the line, and just stated like very clearly, I don't expect you to, I don't want you to promote this or anything, but just like I'm giving you this in the chance that you read it, just knowing that like you are responsible for this. Very simply put, I grew up reading Brandon Sanderson as a quote unquote local author before he was so big.
Hmm.
And so he's been my favorite along the way. And then really when I got into Stormlight Archive, I got really into that inspirational period where I wanted to write. And so I directly put in the acknowledgments like this book would not be here without him. And he was kind enough to accept that. He's like, I can't promise that I'll get to it or if anything, but if I do, I do,
Hmm.
which was really cool. So I just got to do that, gave it to him, and so we'll see if anything comes from it. I mean, if anything, like you said, you saw me on there, and I think a lot of people saw that. And even though they might not have no idea who I am, to see that, my dream was fulfilled, that I got to give the author responsible for my writing inspiration a book, that was pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's always, and again, like you just said, you are from there, so you were around before he had become so huge. So again,
Hmm.
it's like you have kind of seen him from almost the beginning ish of what he was doing, and so it's kind of a cool full circle moment for sure.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, he seems like he'd be a pretty down to earth guy in person. I get a lot of comments sometimes on my videos about like, what would you recommend for like books to read or something to learn? And I just point them to that YouTube series. I'm like,
Hmm.
honestly, if you don't know where to start, I mean, there's a lot of books and there's a lot of great stuff out there, but I watched that YouTube series.
Yeah. And it's so simple. And I mean, you don't need to watch all of it. They're all focused on something different. And it's something, I've gone back and revisited because, when I first watched it and he had the series on publishing, those weren't as significant to me until I actually got to that point.
Hmm.
Um, and it is very simple and plain stuff out there. And most of my writing, like information, I've read a couple of things on like just actual books on writing, but a lot of it was from me looking at my favorite authors and just listening to them talk, like Neil Gaiman's masterclass.
Hmm.
Um,
That one's a great one
side,
too.
yeah, just things like that, like listening to authors talk about things, and they honestly state it pretty simply. Besides all the mechanics, it's just write what you want to write.
Hmm. Yeah, that I so I'd written for a while and I'd gotten um some books and I read some books and watched some other things. But then like so even after I'd even felt like I'd learned some, I still watching that lecture series, it just like it blew my mind. The first I was like, oh my
Hmm.
gosh, this is game changing. And same with Neil
Yeah.
Gaiman's, that one's a great one too. Um
Hmm.
it's also interesting to hear, there's so many different processes, like writers doing so many different ways. So maybe we can get into a little bit of that. Like, what's your process look like when you start a
Yeah.
book or, you know?
Well, and I feel the same. I do get intimidated sometimes when I hear that like I think Christopher Rocchio that did the Sun Eater had like for his books will do like, a 60-page outline, and I am not that way at all. Whereas then you have other people that just are very successful authors and write just on the whim. And I feel like I'm a good in between. Um so people will ask me, like, do you know how your series is going to end? Yes. Do I know everything that's going to happen? No. So I refer to it as like a skeleton. Book two, I have pretty much outlined. I know all the events that need to happen, and anything that might show up if I'm writing, I'm completely willing to change it. Um, but like that's how I said. Like I have six significant events set up. Between each POV character, I'll set up what their next, like right as I finish one chapter, I'll go jump down the outline, write what needs to happen in their next chapter, and then down at the bottom I have what needs to happen in that book. But I've noticed that I like that a lot more than just straight hard outlining, because most of um, my favorite things that I've written have just come up while on the whim. I'm just in the middle of writing, like, oh, this will be good, just crazy good inspiration coming, and that's generally my approach. I'll be thinking kind of about the story all day, and if I have something that I think needs to happen in there, I'll go throw it in there, um, and that's pretty much it. Skeleton outline.
Yeah. Yeah, I think when I first started, I just wrote because I like didn't have a clue what I was doing even at all. And then I eventually kind of hard pivoted into like heavy outlining.
Hmm.
Then I've decided I've kind of landed somewhere in the middle. Like so I kind of I'll write a lot, get stuck, then I'll outline, then I'll get stuck, and then I'll write, and then I'll like it's kind of a
Hmm.
circular thing. I do think it helps to know where you're going. Like if you kind of know what the ending is,
Yeah.
you want that to be. So so you're obviously writing a series. Do you kind of know what the ending of the series is, or do you just have the ending of the next book? Like do you have like kind of a
Yeah.
micro and a macro outline?
Yeah, so I've got a little both. So book two, I have outlines, you could say, as far as I will outline that I know all the things that will happen. Um, Individual events are still yet to come in there. And then I'm doing a trilogy. So the end of book three, I know how the series is going to end. I've known since I finished book one what that needs to be. But that's definitely changed as the series has gone on. So the individual events that happen in book three are more so like there are things that I need to reveal that I might reveal at the end of book two, might reveal at, like the start of book three. It's just subject to how much ground I cover. So it's more so like you said, just I know what needs to happen in the end. Things leading up, those are dependent on how everything else goes.
Yeah, for sure. Do you kind of go with your outlining, do you tend to be a little more world building focused, character focused? Like, there's some people who it's like they can follow their character all the way through, but then there's other like especially in fantasy, I'm more of a world builder, so like I kind of built a world and then I
Hmm.
started placing characters within that. So, how do you kind of approach like where did the idea kind of come from? Was it more of a character thing, more of a world building thing?
Yeah, so definitely beginning with Sanderson as an inspiration, I think I went world building first. And it's kind of turned more to where I feel more comfortable in my world now. I know a lot of people that um, read my first novel might struggle as they do with like Malazan or Stormlight, where it's a complex world. There's a lot to it.
Hmm.
But once you get in it, you're comfortable. And that's where I hope my readers are at this point, that I've given a lot more focus on my characters. And it's something I've definitely developed as I've grown as an author. Um, I know people really like my novella a lot because it is focused on a single character, and there's a lot of emotion in him, even though it's like, 100 pages. Whereas the other one definitely more like focused on the society and a plot. Um, but this one I think definitely shifts a little more towards character, but it's just a big balance. I'll
Hmm.
be going, I'll outline based on character journeys that they need to do, but in there I'll note significant world building things that have to be addressed by certain people.
Hmm.
So like when I say the big events that I know they need to happen at the end of the world story, those are more world building related. Those are related to the plot overall and not individual characters. So it's all about weaving in these characters' stories to meet that big end pinnacle.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, obviously, I think characters, you have to have characters that people care about first and foremost. But especially for fantasy, to me, like you can't slouch on the world building because in a sense, the world building is a character in its own
Hmm.
right, Um, so I think, I don't know. I always start. I love the world building aspect. I love cultures and creating all that kind of stuff. So that's always just fun for me.
Well, I agree, and I think that that's what really draws me to Brandon Sanderson, because I like having like this knowledge of like such deep lore that you can dig into, or Malazan where it's like so deep and heavy, but there's like so much about there.
Hmm.
Whereas Joe Abercrombie, that's become one of my favorite authors, and I've learned to like him, is so much more focused on character that, when people, if I have a friend reading it, I don't even, if they have questions about the world, it's like you don't need to worry about it.
Yeah.
It's about the characters themselves, and I think that that's just something that um, readers need to realize when they're going to read a book. They just have to kind of see what the author's going for. Um, I can be, just like you. I am a big world building fan, but it doesn't mean I can't enjoy a character focused book.
Hmm.
And I think that it kind of gives me appreciation for, like you said, the world as a character. It is something that when an author gives a lot of attention to, it makes the world feel so much more real and immersive. And I think once you grasp it, a lot more comfortable with the story in total.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think so. I've not read Malzan. I've never got into that one.
Hmm.
I actually, so confession, I have not read book 4 of Stormlight
Hmm.
because, so I have it, and I got into Brandon Sanderson stuff just a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
So I read the first 3, and I'm a really slow reader, so like big books like that
Mhm.
just take me a long time to get through.
Yeah.
So I read the first 3, and then I knew he was working on 5, but they hadn't really announced it, and so I thought I'll save Rhythm of War for like when I know that one's coming out. So now that he's kind of announced that timeline, I'm gonna get into that
Yeah.
one and read it. But I thought it was like there's no rush,
Yeah.
we'll just save it for the right time. So
That's a good thing to do too,
yeah,
because I definitely need to do some brushing up before book 5, because it's been a bit since I've read the others.
yeah. I've also been I'm partway through Wheel of Time, and so tell me if this ever happened to you. So I love the Wheel of Time story. I love the characters. I think the world building is incredible. Like the whole thing is great. I really struggle with Robert Jordan's prose.
Yeah.
So like I
Yeah.
love the book, but I sometimes I'm like I almost feel like I don't want to read it, but I do want to read it
Yeah.
because the prose is just difficult.
Yeah. And like I honestly treat the Wheel of Time as like the Star Wars prequels to me. I
Hmm.
love them for what they are, but I
Yep.
know that there are so many problems with it. Like, to be fair, beginning of the Wheel of Time and the end are masterpieces. I love them so much, but I really struggled in the middle. Whereas like, books from like I'm looking at right now, like Crown of Swords to probably Towers of no, to like Knife of Dreams. I honestly don't remember anything that happened there. It was
Hmm.
just like when I was reading it, it was just kind of like going through it to go through it, where I was enjoying it, I was having fun, just because I was in the world that I loved. And I think that's one of the great things that he's done is that it's a
Hmm.
long series that you can just kind of go along the journey. But yes, there are definitely problems with it, but it doesn't mean that, it's a bad series.
Hmm.
It's just, like you said, the prose is difficult.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm in book 5 right now. And so, but
Hmm.
I've heard that like 7 to 10 or like 9, whatever, that it's kind of like a rough patch there.
Yeah.
But then my older brother, he's read through, he loves them, so he's read through them like 7 times at this point. Like he just loves it.
Yeah.
And he said once you get to the last 3 that Brandon Sanderson did, he's like, it just kicks into high gear.
Oh yeah. It's so good. And it's just one of those that, when you finish Memory of Light, you just kind of sit down and think about everything that's gone through there. And it feels like an accomplishment because it's a big series, especially like if you
Hmm.
read New Spring, the prequel in it. There's so much to it, so it feels like a big accomplishment when you're done. And I have all the books, I love them, but I don't know if I'll ever get back to them. Maybe when I'm like 60 and I have
Yeah.
just want to travel back to it, but yeah.
Yeah. I think there's an article on, it's like barnesandnoble.com. They did a blog a few years ago that's like breaking down the word counts and everything of that whole series. It's like 4.5 million words, the whole thing, and
Yeah.
like breaking up all the books and show it's pretty interesting to read actually.
Hmm.
So speaking of long series, do you have like so you got a trilogy in these books. Do you have plans to continue in this world? You got a different series in mind? Like what would be after these ones?
I think depending on where this series will go when it's done. So, like I said, keep it at the trilogy, but I'm very open to doing more in the series if I feel like it's necessary. Like something that I loved is Joe Abercrombie's second series that he did in the first lot, or Brandon Sanderson's second era of Mistborn. I thought that those are super fun, where you could enjoy them on their own, but they have connections to the world.
Hmm.
But at the same time, I've considered making small connections to between my different stories. So the other one that I referenced that's kind of a side project that I'm working on is more aimed at being like Will White's Cradle, where it's
Hmm.
more so like shorter books, but a long series
Hmm.
where I can just kind of bust those out in between these ones that are going to be longer. And I'm still on the fence. Like, do I want to connect them? Do I not want to? I don't know. I mean, the magic system and the gods in there are different.
Hmm.
But I that's something that I do love about Sanderson is the Cosmere, the way that he connects them all.
Hmm.
And it was kind of cool to see more in like recent years, especially with the secret projects, how obvious it is. Whereas like in years past, he just dropped little hints there.
Hmm.
So that's my honest plan is just finish this trilogy, write another series on the side, and honestly say where I'm at then. I do like writing a series, but I do like having just kind of the freedom to do something completely different. So I'd love to do, a couple of one shots that have no relation to anything at all.
Hmm. Yeah, you can definitely always, it's fun to have, even if they're not totally connected, it's just having like a little kind of Easter egg. Like if someone else has read it, they'd go,
Hmm.
oh, hey, that's interesting. But it's
Yeah.
not even really connected. My
Hmm.
brother is writing something too, and we both decided we're using for just a little bit the same character that's from a D&D campaign that we did,
Hmm.
and he's using it for this one little scene and I'm using it for one little scene, but they're not connected at all. We just both liked the idea of this character. So it's like
Hmm.
if we ever publish them and people end up reading them, it's like they see it and go, "Oh, that's kind of an interesting connection."
Hmm.
So,
That's super fun.
yeah. Well, cool, man. This has been fun to talk. And
Yeah.
where can we find you first off?
Hmm.
And then how can people support the book and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah. So, my name is Kaden, Kaden Love, and I'm on social media at Kaden Love Author, one word, no punctuation or numbers. That is on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. I'm honestly a little more active on Instagram on my other page, which is basically just a copy of my TikTok. It's at Svetling Press. It's just my self-published company. Just that one's honestly kind of exploded the past couple days, so I've focused on there.
Mhm.
But if you go to any of my accounts, there's a link to my website, or it's kadenrlove.com. You can go there to get signed copies, which I package and sell myself, as well as the ebook of Beast Call, which is a novella. I give it out for free to newsletter subscribers, or you can also buy it in print. But yeah, that's where I'm at.
All right, awesome. Well, we'll definitely have to do this again and
Yeah,
hear updates whenever book 2 starts happening.
cool.
Cool.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for watching. It's been Writing Quest, and we'll see you next time.